Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about a little bit of an interesting topic, the fighter's action surge feature and using it with spellcasting, particularly under the D&D 5e 2024 rules. Now I started digging into this this week when I was helping a player convert a 2014 wizard plus fighter multiclass character who used action surge to get off some extra spells into a character for 2024. Now as I was kind of looking into and thinking about things they could actually potentially use action surge for under the 2024 rules, I came to a rather interesting conclusion on something you can potentially do with it. So let's dive in and talk about it a little bit. I thought I would love to share what I found. So here's our agenda for this video. I'm going to give an overview of how the rules worked in 2014 around action surge and spellcasting. Then we'll talk about how the rules changed with the 2024 update. And then we'll talk about a potential loophole I've identified here, and then a little bit of a balanced discussion on this and whether or not it potentially should be allowed. And as this loophole is something that is obviously probably or maybe not rules as intended, it will of course be important to have a discussion with your dungeon master about whether or not you would allow a character to use this. So first, how did the rules work around this in 2014? Well, first, limitations around spell casting only came if you used your bonus action to cast a spell. So in particular, under the 2014 rules, if you cast a spell, any spell with your bonus action, the only spells you could cast with your action that turn were cantrips with a casting time of 1 action. This rule was a little confusing, and the rule that a lot of people thought existed, which was only 1 spell slot per turn, actually did not exist under the 2014 rules. There were no limits on the number of spell slots that you could spend casting spells on a turn. Additionally, action surge, which you got from fighter level 2 and still get from fighter level 2 in the 2024 rules, could be used to take any action. There were no limits on it whatsoever. So what this meant is that all of these combined means that you could cast a spell, action surge, and cast another spell. For example, you could fireball, action surge, cast another fireball. Another example, if you're a higher level character, is you could cast the Sickening Radiant spell, action surge, and then drop a force cage on top of any enemies that were in that area to keep them inside and cook them alive. This is a combo a lot of characters called the microwave or the eldritch microwave and that kind of thing. Alright, so what changed under the 2024 rules? Well, Wizards of the Coast took some measures to try to make action surge not such a good option for dedicated caster characters. As a matter of fact, you could say that they didn't want to allow any wizards to use it. So, particularly, there are a few things that they changed. 2 things in particular. The first one is a change to the casting limits. So, rather than imposing limits based on casting with a bonus action, the rules has changed to you can only cast 1 spell with a spell slot per turn. Okay, fine. So could you potentially action surge, cast a spell, and then cast a cantrip? Well, yes, but they also changed action surge, so it excludes the magic action from the options that you can take. Now, the magic action is a new category of action that they created that's used to cast spells and use magic items. And I think, creating the magic action was intended to make things clearer. There's also a few class features that use the magic action and that kind of thing. And these two combined should mean that you can't use action surge for extra spell casting, right? Well, here's where the potential loophole comes in. All right, so here's a list of all the actions in the game. You got attack, dash, disengage, dodge, help, hide, influence, the magic action, the ready action, search, study, and utilize. Now, action surge specifically says you can't take the magic action. However, what actions allow you to cast spells? Well, for one, yes, the magic action allows you to cast spells. But there's actually another action on this list that lets you cast spells. And that is the ready action. The ready action lets you cast spells with your reaction, and it is importantly not the magic action. So let's dive into the text of the ready action here. So it's rather long, but basically we can take the ready action on our turn to wait for a particular circumstance before we act, and then so we'll take the ready action on our turn, and then we act by taking a reaction on the start of our next before the start of our next turn. And particularly, we can ready a spell. And when we ready a spell, we cast it as normal when we take the ready action. Importantly, this expends any resources used to cast it. And then we hold its energy, which we release with our reaction when the trigger occurs. You can only ready spells that have a casting time of an action. And holding on to the magic requires concentration. And if your concentration is broken, you lose the spell. So, important things here when you want to ready something that would normally take a magic action, like a spell, or even using a magic item. So you can use the ready action to cast spells or use magic items, and importantly, it's not the magic action, so therefore you should be able to ready action surge. You could cast a spell, action surge, and then ready another spell. However, so this is going to use your reaction and your concentration, at least if you ready a spell. Additionally, you still have to follow the one spell with a spell slot per turn, because ready consumes the spell slot when you take the action to ready. So this means that, for example, you could fireball, action surge, and then ready a cantrip like firebolt. Alternatively, you could use a cantrip like mind sliver, action surge, and then ready a control spell like hold person or slow and that kind of thing. So yeah, again, basically this allows you to cast a leveled spell and a cantrip by using action surge to ready a spell instead. Okay. And I'm going to kind of dub this tactic the reaction surge, just so we have a quick and easy thing to categorize it by. So let's talk about balance of this tactic and whether or not it's fair. Obviously, again, this may not be a rules as intended interaction, and if you want to use it, I do highly recommend you talk to your dungeon master about it before you use it. Now, as for me, when looking at things like this, even if they're things that are within the realms of the rules as written, which I think this is, even though it may not be rules as intended, there are 3 questions that I like to look at to answer not whether it should be allowed or it should be something that should be changed. So the first question is it realistic? Is this something that makes sense within the context of the game rules and other comparable things that you can do in game? Second question is it fun? Is this something that a player would have fun using? And is it not going to be repetitive? Is everyone going to enjoy it and that kind of thing? And the final question is it fair or is it balanced? Does this break the balance of the game? Is it a standout option compared to other things that are in the game that are legal and that kind of thing? So let's jump into this first one. Is it realistic? So a caster gathering power for a quick barrage of spells. I would say yes, that is realistic. This seems just as realistic to me as a martial character gathering themselves and unleashing an additional barrage of attacks on the same turn. I don't think it breaks that fantasy at all. So I would answer, is it realistic? Yes. Next, is it fun? And I personally find doing more stuff on your turn is, yes, fun and very enjoyable. More spells, a bit of extra damage, it's honestly just a cantrip. That's a yes for me on whether or not I would see this as fun. Now, for this final question, is it fair or balanced? We need to compare to a few things. First of all, the reaction surge tactic is going to consume our reaction. It's going to consume our concentration, so we're not going to be able to concentrate on hold concentration on a prior spell when we use this. We can only do this once per rest, and it'll basically give us an extra cantrip or magic item use on our turn if we combine it with a leveled spell. So let's compare to a couple other things that are totally within the rules that are available. First is a character that has 2 levels of Sorcerer and the Quicken Spell meta magic. This character can cast a leveled spell and a cantrip and still have their reaction and concentration available, and can do this pretty much every turn so long as they have sorcery points. Additionally, a character with this multiclass would have a full spellcasting progression versus a character that has 2 levels of fighter, because those fighter levels will not contribute. So the reaction surge tactic, so 2 levels of fighter on an otherwise full caster, is going to be strictly worse at this from an action economy perspective than a character that has 2 sorcerer levels. Next, let's look at a caster who's multiclassed with 3 levels of Thief Rogue for the Fast Hands feature. A character that has the Fast Hands feature can use a magic item as a bonus action every turn without any limits and still potentially be able to cast full spells with their action. And they also have their concentration and reaction available. So again, I would say a character who's employing the reaction surge tactic is going to be worse than a character that's using Thief Rogue for the Fast Hands feature. So therefore, overall, I would say that yes, this is balanced, especially in light of those other options. I don't think it particularly breaks the game or the fantasy or any of that. And so therefore, I would probably allow this tactic myself if a player asked for it. Of course, that said, whether or not this will be allowed, it will obviously be entirely up to the DM of a particular table, whether that's you or if you're a player, you should ask them. So overall, this has been our kind of overview on how Action Surge can work in the 2024 rules. Thanks for watching. What do you think? If you're a DM, is this a tactic that you would allow at your table? And if you're a player, is this something that you would even want to use or consider? Please let me know about it in the comments. And as for me, again, even though this may be an unintended exploit, I don't find it particularly powerful in light of what other options already exist, and I would probably allow it. So again, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.